everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, coming to you as always from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tully, and joining me as always is my co-host, Mr. Garrett K. Jones.
What up, yo?
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a very good, very productive day, and it's been fun. I got to see the new Ant-Man movie, and so no spoilers, but it was enjoyable. I really liked it.
Good. Looking forward to actually seeing that this weekend, like I was saying off camera, or yeah, whatever. Anyway, we are not here to talk Marvel. We are here to talk another Disney property, and that is Star Wars. Yes. And we are on the latest episode of Bad Batch, which was titled...
I actually don't remember what the title was.
I know, me either.
That's how much it meant. It stood out to me. Like I'm having to actually pull up my Disney Plus app right now. Hold on a second. It is... I don't know why, but the security started asking for like a PIN number. It's ridiculous. All right, Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode...
Was it 9?
Yeah, Episode 9. It was called The Crossing.
The Crossing.
Yes, the team tackles a risky mission on a hostile world.
Yeah.
The world didn't really seem so hostile as it was just, like, devoid of life.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I have one question. Why do they have Wrecker on lookout? Why? Of all the people, you have a guy on there whose literal job, like literally what he's created to do, was have heightened senses of eyesight and sight. But you have the guy who would have been perfect for the job that Hunter was doing, which is lifting things and carrying them.
Yeah.
But yet, you have him be...
From a writing perspective, and this may feel like a cop-out, but from a writing perspective, it feels like what they did is, now that Echo is no longer a part of the team, he's off doing his own thing, it feels like their whole dynamic has shifted, and they're trying to figure that out. But it's like they had a dynamic before Echo was a part of the team, so I don't know what's changed. Everyone has their skill base, and they know what their jobs are. That hasn't changed.
I think for the rest of the batch, I think who it's changed the most for is Omega.
Yes.
I think that was kind of the crux of it, is Omega learning to deal with the fact that he's gone, that Echo is gone. Because the rest of them seem to be pretty... I mean, they might miss him, but they all seem to be processing it differently than Omega is. They're both like, well, okay, this is kind of part of the job, especially if you see Tech.
Yeah.
Tech was very much, that's just, you're in the military, that's part of the job. You lose, whether it's through transfer or them dying, you lose friends.
Yeah,
they move on.
That's that soldier mentality, and Tech is one of those characters, like, because of the way he was cultivated as a clone, he is able to disassociate himself from the emotional side of things. He's very much that savant. He's Sheldon Cooper without the without all the annoying little idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, exactly. He's very much, I don't want to use the term on the spectrum, but he very much is in that type of group. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't think it's a spectrum disorder. I think with Tech, it's more of, he's just so smart that he's constantly intellectualizing what's happening. He's For him, it's better for him. It's easier for him to process things from a logical perspective than it would be for an emotional perspective.
Yeah, which I think makes the dynamic between him and Omega so interesting, because Omega is, whereas you have someone who is very detached, very unemotional, almost to cross the streams, almost Vulcan-like in his outlook. And then you pair him with someone like Omega, who is almost the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Who wears her heart on her sleeve.
Yeah,
and her emotions on her sleeves. And very emotional, very just... It makes for an interesting dichotomy between the two.
Yes, I would agree with that. And what's interesting is that you've got Hunter, who is the leader of the team, but at the same time, he's still trying to figure out how to, he's trying to figure out where his place is in all this, because as much of a leader as he is, Omega is oftentimes especially in this season, taking on leadership roles. Like, she's the one saying, "Hey, we need to go do this job," or "Let's go do this." And it's, he's probably questioning where his position is on this team, because she seems to be doing a lot of the decision making.
Yeah.
I did like the fact though that this episode gives us a little bit more time with Tech and Omega, and we get to see a side of Tech that we haven't really seen before. I mean, we knew that this part of his personality is there, but they don't interact a whole lot together. And this is at least not by themselves, and this was an opportunity for them to interact by themselves without any other characters to color in the field of what's happening.
And we're going to be, just so you know, we're going to be jumping back and forth. We're not going to be going in chronological order for the series, but just kind of what we picked out and story beats. One thing I thought interesting was when Omega slipped off the cliff and she fell down. You have a character in Tech who is so analytical and never jumps into anything without knowing what the risks are. Jumps in without knowing what the risks are. Like, he doesn't even hesitate a second to go after Omega when she falls down. It was just instant. I got to go after her. I thought that was really, and it just shows that, not only that soldier mentality of never leave a man behind, but the fact that he does see Omega as family.
Well, I think more than that, it's not just that. It's the fact that the calculated risk that he's already made of what's worse, me not going after her, or me going in blind and risking myself, because he already knows that he's going to risk himself to save a brother, or in this case a sister, and which is the clone mentality. That risk has already been calculated. It's the risk of, well, what happens if she doesn't come back? What happens if I can't save her? Before I don't go after her.
Yeah. Well, what else happened? It was very much I think it was interesting that last week we asked the question, are they going to keep on this kind of storyline driven episodes, or are they going to have any more? Are we going to be done with the standalones? And then we have a standalone episode.
To be honest, as I was watching this episode this week, I was a little bit miffed by this, because it feels like now that as we're getting this far into it, we're 3/4 of the way through, I take that back. We're a little more than halfway. We're about 55% of the way through the season, because we still have another 7 episodes to go. But we have 7 episodes left, and of the episodes that we've seen the majority of the season, they've all been standalone. They've all been episodes where it's just filler. There's no reason for this whole adventure. Like, again, this is like, if we got rid of this episode, it wouldn't make a dent in the overall plot of the season. It's just there for filler, and it feels like for me that the writers kind of got pigeonholed into what they were doing. Like, the first season was so successful. They had a plan for that first season. They didn't think that it was going to be as good as it was. It was great. And now they're painted into a corner because they have to produce these episodes and they have to write these things. And the content is just, where's the overarching storyline? We're not seeing that. It feels, I mean, the animation is fine. The performances are great. Overall, the story is weaker than it was season one.
And, like I said before, maybe once we get to the season finale and we look back, we'll see that, that there were threads that were going through all of these so-called filler episodes. But like you said, for right now, it doesn't seem like it. It just seems like these are just kind of standalone, just, for ways to kind of, let's give, more story to Tech and more story to Omega. Let's, take a little detour here and there, but that's fine for every once in a while, but it seems like this season is doing a lot of it.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have a problem with characters getting fleshed out over the course of an episode and getting a little bit more insight into their personality and what makes them tick. What bothers me is just from a storytelling perspective, and even from a lore perspective, because I mean, Star Wars is always about the lore. What's the bigger thread here? I mean, the biggest thread so far has been what took place with the clones in the last two episodes and how they're in the process of being phased out by the Empire. But that's it. I mean, that's the biggest thing, and it's taken care of now. It feels. I don't know. It feels like it's going in a direction that, may not necessarily be a very solid one.
Yeah. Now, do you think you would feel the same if a show like The Bad Batch had started out more in a classic episodic way series, where each episode is kind of its own contained story and there's not like an overarching story? Do you think that these kind of standalone episodes would bother you as much if they were just like, oh, this is an episode, it has a beginning, it has an end, and then we move on, and there's a beginning and an end, and we move on?
No, because we've seen that. I mean, that's a kind of a staple when it comes to most hour-long programs or even hour-long programs, and that's perfectly fine. For me, my preference is more episodic because you get a full scope of the story. You don't have these random episodes happening, and like it. I don't know. It's just like if it started off just these one-offs, it probably wouldn't bother me as much, especially as we got deeper into the series and they started becoming more episodic and serialized. But the fact that we're not having that happen, we had that, and then they've taken it away, and it felt like they were starting to bring it back, but then they don't.
Yeah,
it's like it leaves me very, very confused, and so like I'm waiting to see how the season ends up, and I'm sure it's going to be solid because again, Dave Filoni and his team are really good about making sure that the audience and the fans get what they're asking for. But really, at this point, what I want to see things start coalescing with Crosshair. Like, where has he been?
Yeah, we saw him one episode.
He's been one episode out of 9 so far.
Yeah,
he's a huge part of this story. And
he was the entire crux of last season.
Yeah.
Like, he was the entire focal point. The entire focal point of last season was Crosshair hunting the Bad Batch.
And we've got to get him back on the team. We've got to fix him. Come to find out, he's already gotten the chip removed, and he still feels like this.
Yeah.
And we're not getting any of that content. There's none of that storytelling. And it's like we had this great episode with Crosshair, and where is that now? What am I missing that it where he's not being included?
Yeah. It's just it doesn't make any real sense. I agree. It's been, I mean, was there anything good we can? I mean, I think there was some good we can take from this episode as far as being a.
It was definitely a team rebuilding exercise for them, and I think with the loss of Echo, they needed that. But there are other ways that they could go about doing that, push the overall narrative, especially for something so serialized.
And like we said at the beginning, there were so many choices that happened that led them to where they were that made no sense to me for the team to do. Yeah. Like, I know we joked about it, but I mean, having Wrecker in the lookout made no sense.
The other thing that caught my attention, though, and I thought this was kind of interesting, because last week you and I talked about, are they positioning Omega as being a
force,
being a potential force user? And when she discovered that little hidden cave of whatever this mineral is that they are collecting in the episode, like, I thought maybe she stumbled upon, some really cool, rare trove of kyber crystals, and she's found her lightsaber crystal. I thought, okay, if that's the direction that they've been putting us through, okay, this is kind of cool. And it gives us a little bit more substance about her character. No, it's just another hidden vein that's way more rich in this mineral that, it's a MacGuffin that it's like, okay, this stuff could be traded in for whatever it was that they were looking for in Solo, a Star Wars film. So
exactly.
I do think that the character performances were really good. I mean, D. Bradley Baker, it's just him and the actress who's playing Omega. I mean, aside from that one brief call from with Sid towards the end, I mean, they're the only two actors in studio doing anything. And so I was really impressed by how quickly you've got. I mean, they're recording it and they workshop it in post as far as like where the characters are talking over each other. But to have D. Bradley Baker going over and playing 3 different characters simultaneously, in the episode, that's a lot of work for one voice actor.
Yeah. And I think it was, like you said, I think you kind of mentioned it earlier, to get that one-on-one interaction between Omega and Tech. Because you kind of already have set the relationship between the rest of her and the rest of the batch. Like, you kind of know the relationship between her and Wrecker and how that is. You know the relationship between her and Hunter. And you kind of get a sense of, like, their connection to each other, where, Omega really looks up to Hunter as almost a father figure.
Yes, he's definitely the father figure. Whereas Wrecker and Echo were kind of like the
uncles, older brothers. Yeah, especially I think Wrecker, he's more of the fun-loving, the fun uncle. Yeah, he's the one that's always, it's like, oh, let's go out and let's go have some fun and let's go and.
He's definitely the one that helps get her into trouble.
Yeah. But you didn't have we hadn't seen what that relationship between her and Echo or her and Tech was, and so it was really interesting to see that dichotomy happen and kind of coalesce, and how we kind of see their relationship and what that's like.
Yeah, and. I like I said, I thought that was really good in the way that it was performed. It was you get to see a little bit more evolution there. Now, you mentioned something before we started recording. You talked about this being a bottle episode. I hadn't actually paid attention to that, because usually when you have a bottle episode, the episode takes place in one space, and technically it does because they're trapped inside this mine. But for the majority of it, they actually bounce back and forth between two different mines. Well, not back and forth, I should say. They bounce from the mine that they go to, they cross through the canyon, and then they find a secondary mine, which is where they get trapped, and then they find a way out. But I hadn't actually looked at it as a bottle episode. So, I mean, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts were on that, because bottle episodes are great, but they're usually used for cutting down on like props and stage costs.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not a bottle episode in the traditional sense, but it's for the majority of the episode, for a good chunk of the episode. You know, you have them, it bounces back to where the rest of the batch is, but for a lot of it, it is just Omega and Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a good chunk of the episode is just Omega and Tech. So in that sense, I think you can call it a semi-bottle episode. It is hard to call to refer to an animated show, episode of animated show as a bottle episode, simply because of what bottle episodes are used for traditionally, which is cutting cost.
Right.
And like you said, they can be great. Bottle episodes are their best. I think bottle episodes can be really good for character development, really getting into characters, because usually it's just one or two people in a room or in one area, and that's all is. So it really leads to good character development. But at their worst, they can be clip shows. Yes, and like
one of the things that we see here, and you see this happen a lot in romantic dramas or romantic comedies, but you have what storytellers use is what's called forced proximity. So you have two characters that have differing perspectives on something, and they are forced to spend time together. Now, in the past, when they're on the ship, Tech is usually piloting the ship, and she's hanging out in her little cargo space, or she's in the hold talking with Hunter or Wrecker or Echo or whoever is available. This is one of those rare moments where they're forced to be in the same space together. There's something very claustrophobic about that, and so the use of space. The one thing I had an issue with was the lighting on the episode. I get that they're in this dark mine and there's no natural light, but I almost had to turn up the contrast on my screen just to be able to see anything. It was like watching that one particular episode of Game of Thrones where you had to do exactly that just to be able to see everything in the dark. And my eyes were straining just having to watch 20 minutes of this. But I like that use of forced proximity.
This just got me when we're talking about Omega and how this was a lot of this was Omega learning to process. Is in we don't know how long after the events of the last episode that this episode happens.
Yeah,
but we're guessing it's been. Yeah, but you have in the span of let's just say a week. Not only does Omega lose one of her brothers, not permanently, obviously, but he's Echo's gone from the team, and she loses her home. She literally sees her home fly away. The only home she's known since she left Camino. It just goes and flies away.
Yep.
And she has to process that like, oh, that's where all my stuff's at. That's where... And again, did they just leave the keys in there? What happened with that? How?
Yeah, that kind of boggles my mind because I'm like... Because we've seen how easily ships can get stolen in the Star Wars universe. I mean, case in point, Anakin getting into a starfighter and just, turning it on by accident.
Yeah.
How easy is it to steal not just a starship, but a military grade starship Like, there's got to be redundancy.
Yeah.
Unauthorized access.
I know, right? Yeah, there's this fingerprint, eye scanner, DNA. What? I was expecting that.
There was way more.
At first, I kept expecting to see a explosion. I kept expecting the guy to blow up the ship.
Yeah, that would have made more sense.
Then I just see it flying away. Yeah, that would have made more sense. And it was like, oh, okay. But no, I see it flying away. I'm like, what? How?
Yeah, there's some really weird choices. Like, it's like they had Hunter inside the mine where he can't use his natural abilities. You've got Wrecker,
and he was the first one to hear the. If you looked at it, he was the first one to hear the ship taking off because he turns and he looks. And he's like, "Oh,
that's our ship."
No.
And it's like, why don't they have a remote piloting system installed in that?
Yeah.
With Tech and Echo throughout the last season and a half, why have they not done something about that sooner? How great would it be to call land the ship remotely?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable. And don't get me wrong,
I take that back. I'd like to say this is the only show that we've had so far where there hasn't been a droid companion, but there has kind of the EC. I think that's his name. He was the droid that was the little medical droid on Camino. That's yeah. But other than that, there hasn't really been. There's the only one there has. Well, there's not one that there's like constantly one there.
Yeah,
like
like
Clone Wars,
like Rebels where you've got Chopper or
Murder Droid.
Review.
Or as I call him, Murder Droid.
Chopper the Murder Droid. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So overall, if you were to give this particular episode, The Crossing, season 2, episode 9, if you were to give it a score between on a scale of 1 to 10 or letter grade, your choice, what would you give it?
6.5.
6.5. I think
I give it a 6.5. I think it's a decent episode, but yeah, I'd say maybe I'd take it down to maybe even a 5.5. It's right in the middle. It's not a bad episode, but it's nowhere near a great episode. It's an okay episode.
Yeah. I would give it probably about a 6, an even 6. Like I said, the performances were great. The animation's good.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable because I did want to see what happened next. But it just felt like it was lacking something. And I think we've seen better episodes from just even earlier in the season than we are seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'd like to do, I think it will be interesting to do, is at the end is to look back and see if any of our grades change. Any of our, after we see how everything's panned out, and we can look back at some of these older episodes and think like, okay, well, because this and this happened, I now see where this episode was put in there, and now I'm going to give that episode I'll give that episode a higher score. So I think that'll be interesting to look back and see. But, we have episode 10 coming up, and hopefully we'll get back to some meat of the story. Hopefully we'll see Crosshair.
Hopefully. That would be nice.
We haven't seen our everyone's favorite psychopath yet.
To be fair,
for a while.
I think all of the clones to some degree are a little bit mentally unstable.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, considering the fact that their entire purpose was to kill and destroy and maim, specifically Jedi, but their whole purpose was to fight wars, and we've seen what happens to soldiers who spend years on the front lines, they survive. And like the one thing that, and I think part of this may have to do with their conditioning, but they're not conditioned to feel survivor's guilt, or if they do, we don't see much of it. We don't see anyone, like maybe Rex is starting to feel some level of culpability for what happened during the war and what happened with the Jedi, but we're seeing none of that right now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap things up. And Garrett, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you at?
Well, you guys can find me on social media on Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing. You can also find me on YouTube at GKJ Publishing. I have a show called The Right Way where we talk writing and creative writing. I do writing tips, author interviews, and book recommendations. This coming Saturday, I will be doing a live stream on Instagram at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will be announcing who my guest interviewee will be for my 200th episode on March 18th. I'm looking very much forward to that because it's going to be a fun episode.
Nice. All right. As for us right here, you can check us out wherever fine podcasts are heard. Just go to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Look for this logo right here, this cool looking logo, and you'll find us. If you want to get a hold of us, War of the Stars at warofthestars1@gmail.com. That is also our Twitter handle at War of the Stars 1. We are on Facebook and Instagram under War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Patreon.com/War of the Stars for if you want to support the show, or go to our Spreadshirt shop at War of the, just search spreadshirt.com/War of the Stars. I think that is about it. Did I miss anything?
Red 5 Network?
Red 5 Network, yes. Red 5 Network. Check them out for more information on all the shows. Go to red5network.com. And that is it. So until next time, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
This is the way.